Hi everyone, my name is Natalie Ledwell and this is The Inspiration Show. Today on the show we're going to be talking about your brain. Now, contrary to popular belief, you all have a brain, and we're going to be talking about different things to do with brainwave states and how we can use that to our advantage when it comes to manifesting and creating things in our life. But before I introduce my special guest today, I want to just remind you that if you're watching this live on Facebook or later on our YouTube channel, don't forget that after the show, you want to click the link below this video so you can take our 30-second quiz to figure out what's holding you back from success. So please help me welcome my guest today, Morry Zelcovitch. How are you, Morry?
I'm terrific, Natalie. Thank you very much for having me.
Now, if you are part of the Mind Movies community, then you know that we have been working with Morry on our Mind Movies Matrix program. Morry is one of the only certified brainwave entrainment engineers in the world, or very, very few, or one of the first, actually, I should say, because there's a few more now, right?
Well, they claim to be anyway.
That's right. And we're going to be discussing today how important brainwave entrainment is when it comes to creating the life that you want and, creating the right thoughts that are attached to that. So why don't we start first of all, Morry, with your background and how you got into doing this kind of work, because it's a fairly, it's a fairly limited, field of science.
Well, necessity is the mother of invention, and that pretty much says how I got into this. I was incredibly depressed most of my life. And, back when I was a kid depressed, they didn't have pills and medicines like today. So a doctor would just put you on medication now. They just kept saying I was coping well, and I didn't see any reason why I had to cope, because I was actually suffering quite a lot. And I started investigating, and I checked out so many different technologies and so many different methodologies. All of them had value, but none of them helped me. The benefit and the biggest value was I was able to put everything together and create take the best of everything and put it into a technology that actually saved my life.
Oh. So from what I remember of your story, you were very sensitive to sound, when you were growing up. And so how did that play out in the development of the stuff that you do now?
Well, that's actually interesting, because I used to go camping. I noticed that being in nature helped me a lot, because it kind of got me away from everything that reminded me of my depression. And, when you're in nature, when you're camping, there's fires, there's birds chirping, there's all these natural sounds that seem to be repetitive. And I noticed, especially around a fire with the clicking and the flickering, that time would pass really fast. And in my experience, time passed really slow. When you're depressed, time passes agonizingly slow. And I kind of made a connection between the, clicking of the wood as it was, popping and crackling, and my mood. And I noticed that I actually felt better for those moments. And I thought, what if I could create something that would kind of synthesize that for people, for myself, really, because I was being selfish at the time. It was all about me. And it turned out we all have brains, and our brains all work the same way. And it turned out that it actually helped a lot of people. But that was really it. It was just noticing things. When you're desperate, you sometimes pay attention to things that you wouldn't pay attention to otherwise.
Yeah.
Out of darkness comes light.
Absolutely. I think for every perceived negative situation we have in our life, there is always something positive or a gift or something that comes out of it that
for sure.
Helpful. Yeah. So let's talk brainwave entrainment. So what exactly is brainwave entrainment?
Okay. It's interesting that we all go through our lives and we don't really have an understanding as to why things happen. So, something occurs. For instance, I have a dog and my dog gets sick and dies. I decide that's a bad thing. And I start crying and I feel depressed and I feel sad. But most of us don't really realize that there's a whole process involved. So what brainwave entrainment is it's the basest version, if you will, the quantum level of why things are the way they are when it comes to our perception of ourselves, the world around us, and our experience. What happens is our chemistry changes. And it's the chemistry that makes you feel the certain way you feel. Beautiful thing about brainwave entrainment is it allows you to change your chemistry in a directed fashion, rather than emotionally falling off a deep end and going into a delirium or a depression. Brainwave entrainment allows you to direct what kind of frequencies your brain is going to function at. And it's those frequencies that release different chemistry. neurochemicals and endorphins and hormones, all these things that make you actually feel the way you feel and experience what you experience. And I'm sure you can understand that if you experience something with a smile on your face, it's going to be a much more pleasant experience than if you're crying, or if you're afraid, or if you're sad. And it's as simple as brainwave entrainment to make that tweak in your brain so that you go into a positive direction as opposed to the negative one.
Right. So is it a series of sounds? Like what does brainwaves sound like? Like what is it?
It's funny because it's kind of sounds simple. It's a series of pulse tones. There's a quality of your brain called the frequency following response. You may notice if you're listening to music you like, you'll just start, clapping or tapping your toes or things like that. That's called entrainment. You're entraining to a frequency, to the beat of the music, because you're finding it attractive to you in some fashion. So it's the same thing with brainwave entrainment. You have ba 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 ba, and it's these tones that are sending signals through your ears to your brain that get interpreted as an on-off, on-off, on-off type of situation. These on-off situations mimic how your neurons, which are your brain cells, fire anyway. And it's how many times they fire a second that creates the chemistry that leads to what we were discussing earlier.
Right. So I'm assuming that this is pretty helpful when we want to create new thoughts, like new positive thoughts that are in alignment with this future that we want to create.
Sure, it does. The beauty of it is that when you have a positive thought, it creates a positive chemistry and positive frequencies, if you will. But it also works the other way around. You can have negative thoughts, but if you expose yourself to the frequency that is positive, it can change your thoughts to something positive naturally. A lot of us get depressed and get worried and get afraid, and we think this is just how it is. Life sucks, life is tough, life is this. But it really isn't. It's how we choose to interpret it, and it's as simple as changing our brain frequency that can change how we think and how we see things around us.
Right. So are we only having the positive thoughts as we're listening to the brain entrainment, or does that last after after we finish listening to that sound?
Actually, the more you do it, it's like exercise. These things stay. It's like a habit. It's kind of a weird way to compare, but a lot of us drive almost by rote. We don't really pay it. I mean, we're paying attention, but we don't really remember all the functions we're doing because they're automatic now. Well, the same thing kind of happens with your brain. When we walk, when we were small children, maybe we thought about it. We're wobbling away and paying a lot of attention because we're unbalanced. But as you get more experienced doing that, or riding a bike as an example, you just do it. You just know how to do it. And it's the same thing with your brain. Our brains have been trained a certain way. We can retrain them using brainwave entrainment in a different fashion so that we're stronger and better and faster.
Right. So, I was mentioning at the beginning of the show that, we have this little quiz that we ask people to complete to figure out what's blocking them from success. Yeah. And most of the time, what happens is that what it uncovers is some, programming or some beliefs that we picked up when we were children. So we have this belief that we carry through life. And normally what happens is these thoughts, travel along neural pathways in our brain. And we've been thinking them so often, like for sometimes 30, 40 years, that they just become such a natural part of how we think that we don't realize that these thoughts are actually sabotaging us. So is brainwave entrainment really helpful in that situation?
Brainwave entrainment creates new neural pathways.
Right.
So imagine a road, like you say, that's traveled so much, you often see divots in the road from the tire treads, right? Mm-hmm. And that keeps people on the track, right? You even try to turn off of that. Sometimes you find the car pulls back onto the divots. It's almost like a rail. And it's the same thing with your mind, right? So with brainwave entrainment, it naturally creates new neural pathways, new roads, and it gives your brain and your psyche, if you will, more options. And that's the real trick. It gives you more options, because right now, if I tell you, Natalie, let's go to my cottage, and I give you directions, that's great. But if the road's closed, you're lost.
Right.
If I give you a map with many options, well, the road's closed, you go, big deal. Let's look at the map. We turn left here, go up a few kilometers, and we're done. That's how brainwave entrainment works. Brainwave entrainment gives you a map as opposed to directions. It gives you options. And when you have options, it takes care of things like fear and stress and nervous tension. A lot of these things kind of melt away because your instant reaction isn't to freak out or panic. Your instant reaction is to, okay, so there's a block here, big deal. We'll find another way.
Right. And so how often do you have to listen to like a brain entrainment audio to see a difference?
Well, it's best if you make anything a habit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you want to do. You want to make things a habit. If you brush your teeth once a month, your teeth aren't going to do so well.
No.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
I know that you'll have no friends.
That's right. You'll have no friends. Exactly. You won't catch colds though, because no one will go near you. But the truth of the matter is that with brainwave entrainment, it's like anything else. Go to the club, exercise, go for a walk for 20 minutes every day, and you'll find that your overall health is better. If you go for a walk once a month, you'll find it's not so great. So I suggest on a daily basis. Now, a lot of people will complain about the whole daily basis thing, saying, oh, I don't have time, I don't have time. Things like brainwave entrainment make you more effective and more efficient. So you're going to actually use your time better. I found when I started using it on a regular basis, I was eating up maybe, half an hour of my life every day, but I had more spare time. I got my work done better. I had less mistakes. I mean, I had more free time because I was taking care of myself and I was making myself stronger and better.
Yeah. I completely agree. And the thing is that what I love, because I mean, obviously you and I have worked together and we work together using brainwave entrainment. And for me, it's because you can listen to an audio and it like you said, yes, it becomes a habit. But when you have this, when you're able to have this morning routine or this morning practice, for me, it's, watching a mind movie or going exercising or listening to an audiobook, listening to brainwave entrainment is just one of those things that's part of that practice. And it kind of feels weird that when, it's like I would never dream of not cleaning my teeth.
Yeah.
It's actually the first thing I do as soon as I get out of bed. I'm like, I have to clean my teeth. But then, listening to this small recording, which is not very long. It only goes for, the one I listen to goes, between 3 and 6 minutes. So it's quite short. But the difference that it makes in making it easier for you to have these, more positive default thoughts is fantastic. And that's the thing, like we all have programs from our childhood. Some of them serve us and they're fantastic and some of them don't. But I know when I uncovered my limiting beliefs around money, I look back, I'm from a big family, 8 kids, money was always fairly tight. So as if I would have got through that experience without some kind of program around money, that wasn't going to be in my favor. So, but we have them for every area of life, for our relationships, for money, for our self-image, for love, like everything, So using like a technology like this is really effective. And I want to thank you, Morry, for joining me today, but for expanding on, what I think is a field that not many people understand.
Well, it's my pleasure. And the most important takeaway people should have is that this technology is totally natural. It's holistic. I mean, I realize to a lot of people who are being introduced to it today, it's like, wow, science. Very advanced stuff. And it is. But what people need to realize is that science is natural. It's a study of nature. Yeah. It's the study of these things. And we don't have to be so complicated when we understand the dynamics of how our minds work. It's not that tough to figure out ways to use that information to our benefit.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's what the Matrix does. And that's why I'm so proud that you invited me to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, I want to encourage you to join Morry and I. We actually have put together a training session called the Put Your Success on Autopilot webinar. Now, with the team are going to put a link here somewhere for you to be able to click on, or we'll have the banner here on the page if it's after the show has aired. Through this training, Morry and I actually will be talking a lot about the science of the brain. I think that once you understand how our brains work, why we have thought certain thoughts up until this point, and it can be very relieving to understand, oh, okay, that's how I got there. I didn't realize it wasn't my fault, but now that I know and I'm aware of what that is, Morry and I want to go through and show you some tools and some tips and some techniques on how we can shift our brain to be working for us, how we can create those new neural pathways. We also cover a whole bunch of, all the different mistakes a lot of people make when they're moving towards their goal and not sure, what it is that keeps sabotaging them. And I have this awesome exercise that I run inside the webinar as well, which is a tool that you get to take away with you. So it's not just, for the webinar, but you get to take that away with you and really get to the benefits of using that as a tool moving forward, as well as the brainwave entrainment. So guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget to click on the link somewhere here where you can actually, get to click on that webinar, which would be great. Register for that, find a time that works for you. and make sure that you also click on that link below to figure out what is sabotaging you from success, and that will actually be able to help you as you're going into the training. When you already have an awareness of what that is, it'll really help to make that training so much more effective for you. So guys, again, thanks for joining us. Morry, thank you again for joining me. And guys, remember, until next time, remember to live large, choose courageously, and love without limits. We'll see you soon.